I was walking past some of these guys from the uni communist society the other day, and I was thinking, like, what are you guys doing? And they were essentially campaigning around. They were campaigning against this sort of hoarding of power and wealth, and how power and wealth belongs to the hands of a few, which is fair. It's a fair problem, and there's something in our conversation which has pointed us towards communism. However, it's wrong to blame capitalism, because I think that capitalism is actually a feature of every production system ever. I think that this competition is genetically wired into human beings. I think it's what human beings actually are. And there's a couple concepts that explain this. So there's something called the Pareto distribution, which is essentially, if you imagine a graph, it essentially says that a couple people are going to be very successful, and a very small amount of people are going to be hyper successful. They're going to have everything. The rest have almost nothing. And
what I know of the Pareto distribution, isn't it like 20% of the inputs acquire 80% of the outputs type vibe? It's like, I see it in like productivity and business like that. And there's this idea that, yeah, that it came from because I know I did this for a YouTube video back in the day, looking at who Pareto was. And it was a guy who observed that like the majority of the housing and the land ownership where he lived was owned by a couple of people, and the majority or a minority of the restaurants had the majority of customers. And he used all these real world examples to show that the minority holds the attention and the power of the majority. Okay, carry on. I just wanted to add that bit.
So with Pareto, every production system ever is like this. So I've got examples here. If you have 10,000 philosophers, 100 of them write half the books. Of 300 R&B singers, 10 of them produce half the music that's played.
Yes.
Essentially, I think it was the square root of the number has half of X, essentially.
Yeah. This is something I remember Peterson talking about with the Matthew principle. There's a line in Matthew in the Bible that says something like, to those who have everything, more will be given. To those who have nothing, more will be taken. And that's me paraphrasing and really like bullshitting that. But yeah, it was stuff. He lists some facts, something like a small minority of stars have the most number of mass. A small number of artists make all the money. A small number of music artists have the most number of plays. A small number of podcasts have the most number of listeners. A small amount of athletes have paid the most money or score the most goals or make the most 3-pointers or whatever you want to look at. That is a fundamental like aspect of human nature. So I like that you're talking about this. Carry on.
That's what the distinction needs to be, because we need to take it from it's capitalism's fault to that is the part of human nature. That's what what the guys at uni didn't understand. And so we've got these three things essentially. We've got the law of 80-20, we have the Pareto distribution, and we have the Matthew principle. They're all saying the same thing. One is from a religious text, one is from kind of mathematics.
Philosopher mathematics, yeah.
And I guess my point here was, trying to understand how you see things and how we can form a solution around this, because we just identified that serving the community is the way forward. But if this is how the world works and how resources and production is distributed, then it's very hard to serve. Like, how do you not kind of go after it and try and serve itself and get in this? Because I think to be human is hard, right? And if you're not extremely competent, like, is your life really that good if you're the people that are losing in this? If you're just sort of, if you're just one of those people that are caught up in it and you're in the middle of it. And I look at the statistics for the amount of Gen Z people that don't have meaning. I look at the mental health statistics. I look at how happy really are people that aren't winning. Because by definition, a lot of people aren't really winning. Yeah. And because my solution is kind of what we've been speaking against. Is individual excellence, which that's my solution. But that maybe, I don't know how that aligns with serving yourself, because you kind of are. You're trying to make yourself more and more excellent. And the problem with that is I don't think people can rise to it. I think a lot of people serve themselves and fail. So, I mean, for example, like Pearson uses this sort of statistics and how it uses the US Armed Force statistics and says that, in the United States Armed Forces, they don't accept people that have an IQ lower than 83, which is 10% of the population. So 10% people, like, how can they compete? And like, but even if you're like an intelligent uni student and you're conscious enough to put your focus into something and you have an okay hand in life, the odds are still massively stacked against you. So it's a hard question, but maybe we can come to a solution about what do you do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very worthwhile discussion, and maybe we won't come to a right out answer today, but it's worth just like digging through the weeds and trying to figure it out. And I like what you've pointed out there, because it's true. What do we do about the unequal distribution of skills to people? And you know, my knowledge of communism and why it doesn't work comes from reading George Orwell's Animal Farm, which I suggest anyone listening to read, because everything starts off all rosy in the farm when the farmer's taken down and the animals take control. But it's the pigs who have an unequal distribution of intelligence that then manipulate and exploit all the other animals. And communism doesn't work because, like you say, there is something innate in human nature to compete. We are an animal. We are a creature, like we were out in the savannah. And can you imagine trying to explain communism to like hyenas when they catch a kill and they're like, no, you have to give 50% of your food to the other pack of hyenas across the savannah. They just like eat your arm off and tell you to go away. Like our animal structures that are so deep in us, our nervous system, and the core of what makes us an animal and a living being is to compete and to survive, because that is how we survive and reproduce and exist. And so we now are in a position where, because of those animal roots, we have to find a spiritual solution to still play that game, but play it ethically. And I think maybe the answer is something to do with your the ethical principles you have for playing the capitalist game, or like the spirit that possesses you to do it. Because I think about this a lot, Jacob. I'm like, how can you be, in my context, how can you be a good athlete without pride and without ego? Jesus, that's a tough question. It might take me my whole career to try and answer, because even when I think I'm doing it to serve others, I love it when I score points. I love it when I post somebody up. I love it when I drive on somebody and beat them with the ball and take a layup. There is a primal part of me that enjoys that. And that's it. Like what? And like, what do we do about that? Because I've written before, and I'm like, the only times that I hate being an athlete is when I don't like live up to my own expectations or someone defeats me. But that's all ego games. That's all ego expectations. And the solution I'm trying to come to, and I think I've come to it, but maybe what's more difficult is applying it and acting it out and being it in the world, is playing the game, but being possessed by love and a sort of like being possessed by an ethical spirit, the Holy Spirit, this sort of unconditional love for others and appreciation for others. And it's not about me as an individual. It's not about my pride or my ego. It's about playing the game. And it's like giving back to the powers that be for giving me this body and this mind and these skills, giving back to them through pursuing that mastery best I possibly can. And in that, trying to bring as many others as I can with me, like giving as much wisdom as I can to people that are, are less experienced than me, and learning from my elders and people with more experience, and listening to coaches intently and trying to put their wisdom into practice. But it's a really hard thing to do, because on the same side, I still have to compete and score more points than this team to win, or I have to be better than this guy to get selected for this squad, or to play minutes, or to like, it's really difficult, because life is a competition that seems like you need to be playing for yourself. But if you play for yourself, even if you win, you won't get what you want. You have to play for others too. And maybe something just popped into my mind that may be able to put things together. Is I was still thinking the other day about this idea that it's not about whether you win or lose, it's about how you play the game. And I think that's that philosophy that we tell children when they first start playing sport or playing games should be applied to the whole of human life. It's not about like who has more money or who has more power or who has more skills or more competence or whatever. It should be about what do they do with that at whatever level you're at. Because you can be a beautiful, moral, peaceful, loving human being, whatever you do. The problem is we see one thing as better than another. And that's purely fueled by ego and pride. I don't know. This is a really good question though, because neither extremes are the right option. Complete self-prioritization. No, communism doesn't work because of human nature. Right? How the fuck do we square that circle?